Welcome. If you find calm in the quiet corners of a busy city, the slow hum of traffic, neon reflections, and late-night walks, you've come to the right place. Subscribe to join us for more still moments in the heart of the metropolis. Now, let's begin.
The sun was beginning its long, slow descent behind the horizon, casting golden threads of light across the patchwork of rooftops, towers, and billboards that made up the city skyline. Up here, on one of the higher floors of a quiet residential building, you had a front row seat to the evening's arrival. Not dramatic, not hurried, but graceful and soft, like a long sigh spreading over concrete and steel. You stood by your living room window, a hand resting lightly on the frame, eyes tracing the shadows shifting across the buildings opposite. The sun's warmth lingered on the glass, a faint echo of the day now fading into memory. Below, the city still moved. Cars glided through intersections, people flowed down sidewalks in little waves, bikes weaved between delivery trucks, but it all seemed more hushed than just an hour ago. Slower, measured. The sky above the towers changed a shade minute by minute. Blue melting into lavender, lavender into a smoky rose, and finally, hints of gray began to creep in at the edges. The clouds, if there were any, floated like thin whispers, stretched and lazy, as if the entire sky had decided to lean back and rest its elbows on the roof of the world. You stepped away from the window, barefoot on the cool floor, and wandered toward the kitchen. Everything around you had the same muted glow. The countertops, the old radio tucked into the corner, the ceramic dish of matches, even the row of mugs on the shelf looked as though they had been softened by the light. You put the kettle on, not for caffeine, but for comfort. Something herbal, something warm. The apartment was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft, distant song of the city filtering in through closed windows. Even at this hour, there was always a background chorus. But it wasn't overwhelming. It was more like a lullaby made of footsteps, tires over wet pavement, and the occasional hum of a distant subway. You leaned on the counter and listened. Not with intent, not to catch something specific, just to hear. There was a peace to it, the way a siren passed without urgency, fading into the belly of the city. The muffled bark of a dog echoing down a corridor of buildings, the soft clack of shoes on a crosswalk. You could imagine them all clearly, even without looking, like actors playing their roles gently behind curtains. The kettle let out a soft click and a sigh of steam. You poured the hot water into a mug with a chamomile tea bag already waiting, watching the color bloom slowly, swirling golden strands into the clear water. You carried the mug back to the window and sat on the wide sill, tucking one leg beneath you. The city stretched far in every direction, buildings rising and falling like waves in a man-made sea. Distant traffic lights blinked from red to green, pausing in between with a moment of quiet amber. Somewhere far off, a plane left a thin trail across the sky, headed toward a place you didn't need to think about tonight. All you needed to do was sit here, in the slow rhythm of dusk, and let the city settle with you. The tea warmed your hands. The light outside dimmed another shade. In one apartment across the street, someone switched on a lamp, soft yellow spilling out through curtains that hadn't been drawn. You could see a bookshelf, a shadow moving gently, a figure sitting at a desk, another living rhythm, another quiet night unfolding. You didn't know who they were, you didn't need to. Just knowing someone else was there in their own soft light was enough to feel the city breathing around you. Behind you, the apartment began to change with the hour. The furniture lost its sharp lines, the corners of the room softened. The walls reflected the glow from the last stretch of sky. It was the kind of light that needed no electricity, an offering from the day as it gently bowed out, You didn't turn on a lamp. Not yet. It felt better to let the dusk finish its story. The tea was cooling now. You held it against your chest and leaned your head against the window frame. The glass had cooled too, and it pressed back against your temple with a grounding chill. Your breath made a faint fog on the glass, and for a moment, you drew a small shape in it with your fingertip. A crescent moon, or maybe just a spiral. Below, the streetlights flicked on one by one. Soft amber orbs lit the sidewalks, stretching shadows of parked cars and trees down the block. A few pedestrians passed beneath them, some in pairs, speaking in low tones. Others alone, wrapped in jackets, moving steadily homeward. There was no rush. No one was running anymore. The hour didn't demand it. You watched them move until your eyes began to drift. Not from tiredness, not quite, but from the calm. From the way the city stopped performing at this hour and simply existed. It let go of its show, let go of its horns and chatter, and began to whisper instead. Somewhere in the building, an elevator door opened with a chime. Someone returning home, maybe 2 floors below. Their footsteps padded past your door. Keys jingled. A quiet door latch clicked shut. That was the rhythm here. Not silence, but closeness. Not stillness, but rest. You stood again, stretching your arms above your head. The weight of the day released itself gently from your shoulders. There was nothing left to do. You didn't need to check the time. The city had already told you what you needed to know. It was winding down. It was time to soften. In the bedroom, the window faced west, catching the last pink glow disappearing behind the outermost buildings. You opened the blinds slightly, just enough to let the colors in. You turned down the bed. The sheets were cool, linen-scented, neatly smoothed. Before climbing in, you walked slowly to the small bookshelf near the wall. Your hand drifted along the spines, touching old friends. Books you hadn't read in years. You selected one without reading the title and opened to a random page. You read a few sentences, not to finish anything, not to learn, just to hear the rhythm of written words again. They flowed gently, like the low conversation of neighbors through an open window. You closed the book and returned it to the shelf. Then finally, you slipped into bed. The blankets welcomed you. The room exhaled. You lay on your side, one hand beneath the pillow, the other resting over your chest. Outside, the last stretch of sky faded into a soft, uniform gray. Streetlights shimmered below like fireflies. The city had grown quiet. Even from high above, you could feel it. The roads now moved less. The subway slowed its pace. Offices went dark. Restaurants closed their doors and wiped down counters. Delivery bikes were returned to racks. And somewhere, high up in dozens of towers like yours, windows went dark, one by one. You let your eyes close, but you still listened. To the whisper of a distant train. To the low hum of your radiator warming. To the quiet breath of a world that had spent the day building, moving, bustling, and now simply rested. You were part of it, held gently in its rhythm like a leaf floating in a still pond. And above you, somewhere beyond the buildings, the stars began to rise, quiet and patient, unseen by most, but present, always present. The lights were dim now, but not all the way out. You'd left a single lamp glowing in the corner of the living room, casting a golden pool across the floor and up the wall beside the bookshelf. It didn't reach every corner of the apartment, but it didn't need to. Just enough to keep the darkness friendly. The tea mug from earlier sat on the window ledge, empty now, but still warm to the touch. You picked it up and carried it to the sink, letting the act of rinsing it under cool water mark the slow division between the evening and the quiet stretch of night to come. There was a certain texture to the night up here, thick and comforting, like a heavy curtain drawn across the world. The kind of silence that wasn't truly silent, not sterile or empty. The kind that had a heartbeat if you knew how to listen for it. You turned off the last lamp and let the room settle. Darkness crept in through the windows, but it was gentle, diluted by the distant city lights. The high-rises across from yours glowed like distant stars, each window its own little world. Some with people reading, others with televisions flickering blue light across tidy coffee tables, a few already dark. And underneath it all, the city whispered. There was no other word for it. You stood in the dim light and listened. A car passed below, tires sighing gently over the damp pavement. Not in a rush, just moving. You imagined the driver easing one hand on the wheel, soft music on the radio, maybe thinking about nothing at all. Somewhere farther down the street, a pair of voices shared a short conversation. You couldn't make out the words, but the tone was easy. Maybe friends parting ways at the corner. A low chuckle, then footsteps fading, then, for a while, nothing. Not silence, just stillness. The city didn't stop. It never stopped, but it slowed. You wandered toward your window and opened it, just a crack. Cool air slipped in immediately, brushing against your arms and bringing with it the scent of night. Faint asphalt, spring leaves, maybe a hint of spices from someone's kitchen far below. The air had a weight to it now. Not heavy, but grounded. You breathed in slowly, filling your lungs, then let the breath go just as slowly. From this height, the city's sounds were softened by distance. The sharpness of day was gone. There were no horns, no construction, no crowds shouting across intersections. What remained were the sounds that passed gently, like boats moving in fog. A dog barked 2 streets away, just once. A bus hissed to a stop, doors opening with a familiar sigh, then closing again with a soft thud. From one of the apartments below, faint music drifted upward. It wasn't loud, barely more than a melody on the air. Something slow, like a jazz record playing low in the background of someone's late dinner. You leaned your elbow against the window ledge and just listened. Even your own building had its own quiet orchestra. The elevator in the hallway moved, just once, its mechanical hum rising gently before fading into stillness. Pipes whispered behind the walls, a long creak followed by a soft drip. A cupboard door opened somewhere above, then shut with a polite click. None of it startled you. None of it felt out of place. These sounds weren't interruptions. They were reminders that you weren't alone. That others too were settling into the rhythm of the city at night. That behind every wall and every window, lives were winding down, just like yours. You pulled the window closed, the latch clicking home with a soft tap, and walked barefoot across the floor. The rhythm of your own steps became part of the soundscape, softened by the rug underfoot. You passed the bookshelf, the hallway mirror, the quiet kitchen counter. The city kept singing behind it all, and as you moved, the melody deepened, not with words, but with sensations. The hum of the refrigerator, low and constant, grounding you like a bass note. The thrum of distant air vents coming on, somewhere in the walls, adding a gentle breath to the space. The soft, almost imperceptible vibration of traffic far below, a reminder that life carried on, but without demand. You entered the bathroom and flicked on the small nightlight, a soft glow shaped like a candle. It bathed the tiled floor in honeyed light. You washed your face, moving slowly, hands cupping cool water, feeling the way the droplets traced their paths across your cheeks and jaw. You brushed your teeth to the tune of a siren in the distance. Not a wail of emergency, just the calm Doppler arc of a vehicle passing far away. already forgotten by the time it turned down another street. The mirror fogged slightly with the warmth of your breath. You turned off the light. Even in the bathroom, the apartment's hum continued. A kind of white noise made of plumbing, walls, and the quiet chorus of other lives above, below, beside. It was time now. You stepped into your bedroom. The room greeted you like an old friend. The sheets pulled back, the blinds lowered, a glass of water by the nightstand. You moved in silence, letting your body follow the familiar script of rest. Outside the window, the lights of the city shimmered. Not bright, not garish, just the soft, muted gleam of countless lives living gently behind glass. Street lights cast slow-moving shadows across your walls, like waves rolling through a dream. You lay down, pulled the blanket over your shoulders, and felt the bed embrace you. It was not just a mattress and pillows anymore. It was a nest. The city sang its nighttime lullaby. Below, a subway train rumbled in the distance, its rhythm like a heartbeat. A neighbor's shower clicked off with a final drip. The wind pushed softly against your window, not quite enough to rattle it. And from somewhere beyond, the sound of footsteps on pavement. Steady, quiet, passing. Each sound was its own kind of reassurance. A signal that everything was still working, still unfolding, still okay. You let your eyes close and listened not with your ears, but with your whole body. You heard the elevator one last time that night, a low hum rising and fading. You heard the refrigerator shift into silence. You heard the city breathe. And you breathed with it. You weren't asleep yet, but you didn't need to be. There was no rush, no expectation, just the slow, quiet process of unwinding, like a ribbon being unspooled in the dark. You shifted gently under your blanket, your hand tracing a smooth line across the edge of the sheets, taking in the cool cotton and the familiar softness of your pillow. You could hear the low hum of the city behind the walls, but inside this room, it felt far away, like a lullaby being played in another room, muffled by time and distance. This was your space, your sanctuary, your little patch of stillness cradled high above the streets. You sat up again, not because you needed to, but because something about these moments was too precious to sleep through just yet. The room glowed with a dim warmth, lit by the soft spill of city lights through your window. No lamp needed. The outside world, for once, gave something back to you. A silver-tinted piece reflected off neighboring windows and polished sidewalks and the glassy curve of car rooftops. You pulled the blanket around your shoulders like a shawl and rose, barefoot on the wood floor. The air in your apartment held a lightness now. Still, calm, settled. The kind of air that felt held in place by the walls and the stories they remembered. You passed the dresser, the framed picture of a quiet afternoon by the river, the postcard stuck to the mirror with its faded stamp and curling edge. Each object familiar, each one part of your quiet ritual. The kitchen beckoned with the promise of something small and sweet. You stepped softly into the space, flipping on the under-cabinet light. A golden stripe that pooled over the counter like sunlight sneaking under a door. You opened the cupboard and took down a single cookie from a tin, carefully wrapped in wax paper. One left. You smiled, a quiet little reward. You poured a small glass of milk and sat at the table. The chairs creaked gently as you settled in, and the cookie crumbled just slightly between your fingers as you bit into it. It tasted like cinnamon and something deeper, maybe memory, or just the comfort of small, predictable joys. The milk was cold. The air was still. You looked out through the window at the city and let the moment pass with no interruption. Somewhere in the building, a neighbor's faucet turned on. Someone else, also not asleep yet. Maybe brushing teeth, maybe rinsing a teacup like you had earlier. You listened to the water for a moment until it stopped with a quiet clack. Then silence again. Or not silence. Just that comforting hush that filled the building like a soft blanket, woven from everyday life. After a few minutes, you rinsed the glass, wiped the counter, and turned off the light. The apartment felt even quieter now. You paused in the hallway and ran your hand gently along the textured wall. A detail you didn't always notice during the rush of the day. But tonight, it grounded you. Let you remember that this was your space, your refuge above the world. Everything here bore the signature of your life. Books left open halfway, slippers by the door, a coat draped over the arm of a chair. You stepped into the small living room and curled into the corner of the couch. The fabric, worn in all the right places, welcomed your weight. You tucked your legs up under yourself, pulling the throw blanket over your lap, and rested your chin against your knee. The room smelled faintly of old pages and cedar. You reached for the book on the table, one you'd read before, a favorite, and opened it to a chapter you loved. You didn't need to read much, just a page or two. The sentences were familiar, the characters like old friends dropping by for a brief visit. You read slowly, the words weaving their gentle rhythm through the stillness. Then you closed the book and let it rest against your chest for a moment before returning it to the table. Outside, the traffic had thinned even more. The occasional car passed below, its tires sending a soft whisper across the pavement. You imagined the glow of dashboard lights, a driver singing to a half-played song. Someone else in their own little world, headed somewhere quiet. You stood again and turned off the hallway light, the softest click marking the turn toward sleep. Back in your bedroom, the bedding was still warm from earlier. You slid under the covers and lay flat on your back, staring up at the ceiling. The city's light shimmered faintly along the white paint, shifting just slightly with the movement of street lamps and passing cars, like waves moving against the underside of a boat. Your eyes traced the patterns. You knew this ceiling so well, that small dent from where you bumped the light fixture years ago, the hairline crack like a pale thread, the place where sunlight landed every morning without fail. This room and this moment felt sacred in its ordinariness. Outside the window, the towers stood quiet, not asleep, but still. Office buildings had emptied. Rooftop gardens stood untouched for the night. The scaffolding that had lined a nearby structure for weeks was abandoned until morning, now just a silhouette of planks and joints against the sky. Everything held its breath. You listened again, eyes half closed. The radiator hummed softly, clicking now and then as it adjusted to the cool air. A delivery truck rumbled past in the distance. The fabric of your pillow shifted slightly beneath your cheek. All sounds close, known, gentle. Your hand drifted to the edge of the blanket, fingers brushing the stitching. It was a gift, this moment. A kind of peace you didn't need to earn. Just receive. You thought of the rooms around you, above, below, across the building. Hundreds of lives, each quietly ending their day. Someone lighting a candle. Someone whispering goodnight into the dark. Someone feeding a cat one last time before turning in. It all felt connected. Not crowded, not loud, but interwoven like threads in a tapestry. Everyone living their own small rituals. Everyone contributing to this vast, peaceful hush that blanketed the building and all the streets below. You shifted onto your side. The sheets rustled. Your breathing slowed. This was your space, your sanctuary. The world could be loud, fast, unpredictable. But not here, not now. Here, you had your own small universe, held together by warm sheets and distant city light, framed by soft sounds and quiet breath. You let your thoughts drift like clouds through a windless sky, and the city, in its own way, kept watch. Even with your eyes closed, you could feel the city around you, not in motion, but in presence, like a great body at rest, its breath long and deep, a living thing, not asleep exactly, but dreaming. It wasn't the kind of dream you could point to or name. It was in the way the buildings leaned into each other for warmth, the way lights blinked on and off at random, like thoughts surfacing briefly before sinking again. It was the soft echo of a basketball bouncing somewhere on a rooftop court, the player hidden from view, repeating the same movement over and over, 1, 2, 3, until the rhythm itself became the point. Your room was still. But outside your window, the metropolis imagined itself in slow, glowing pieces. You opened your eyes just a sliver. The city was there, not lit up like a carnival, not frantic like daytime, but gentle and strange and familiar. One window across the way flickered with the pale glow of a television screen, just a rectangle of soft blue light pulsing faintly in a dark room. You didn't know what was playing. A film, the news, someone else's quiet company. But it felt like a signal in the dark. I'm here too. A few floors below, someone leaned out onto their small balcony. They stood still for a moment, then turned their face toward the sky. Just looking, just breathing, not expecting anything. You imagined what they might be thinking. Nothing, perhaps, or everything. The city made space for both. Beyond them, red neon spilled from the window of a corner store that never closed. It painted the wet sidewalk in patches of crimson and rose, pulsing with each flicker of its sign. Inside, a cashier leaned on the counter, half asleep, while a single customer browsed a row of tea bags and instant noodles. You could picture the rhythm of it perfectly, even without sound. The shelves, the floor tiles, the low beep of a scanner, the drawers sliding open. In another life, you might have been there, picking up a bottle of water, a small snack, or nothing at all. Just walking to walk. Because sometimes the city asks nothing more of you than to drift within it. You closed your eyes again. Not to sleep, just to feel. And in that stillness, the dreams of the city pressed in gently around you. You imagined a lone figure sitting on a subway platform, feet swinging above the tracks, waiting for a train that wouldn't come for another 10 minutes. Their head tilted back against the wall, eyes closed, music in their ears, the fluorescent lights above them humming like electric lullabies. A taxi driver circling one last block before heading home, his radio playing an old tune from a time before rush hours and night shifts. He hums along without realizing it. The street ahead is clear. He lets his foot ease off the gas. A couple walking home under the glow of a street lamp, arms brushing, laughter rising like steam into the night. One stops to tie a shoelace, the other waits. Neither of them says a word. The silence between them is soft and unhurried. All across the city, windows glowed with dim lamps, open laptops, and the silver light of the moon bouncing from glass to glass. They blinked like constellations, irregular, imperfect, alive. Some windows were dark, curtains drawn tight, rooms wrapped in the hush of deep sleep. Others remained open just a bit, letting in the city's breath. You imagined those spaces. A bedroom with string lights and stacked books and the hum of a quiet fan. A kitchen with a cat on the counter and a bowl left soaking in the sink. A studio with canvases leaning against the wall and brushes in an old jar. Every apartment a dream folded inside another. And in every dream someone drifting, into sleep, into memory, into comfort. You turned onto your other side, letting the pillow adjust around your shoulder. The sheets had grown warm now, the mattress perfectly shaped to you. Your fingers curled beneath the blanket, holding nothing, but feeling held. Outside, the occasional engine passed. Tires hummed against asphalt, carrying someone through the city's dream paths. Headlights brushed across brick walls and parked cars. Then they faded again, swallowed by the next block, the next turn. You could feel the weight of so many stories settling into place, like books being gently closed. Somewhere downtown, a jazz trio played their last set to an audience of 5. In a park, a man walked his dog for the 3rd time that night just to be outside. Near the harbor, a ferry sat idle, tethered to its dock, bobbing gently with the tide. Even the sky above seemed to move differently now. Planes no longer streaked in rapid succession. Instead, a single one blinked slowly across the stars, far away and quiet. You watched it for a moment through the corner of your window, its path smooth and purposeful, and you wondered what the city itself might be dreaming of. Not just the people, but the bones of it, the bricks and girders and steel beams. Maybe of the river before the bridges, maybe of empty streets and open sky, maybe of the stories yet to happen in the morning. Coffee shared, messages exchanged, laughter echoing down corridors. But none of that mattered yet. The city could dream forward and backward, outward and inward, and you could simply float within it. You adjusted your blanket again. A soft sigh escaped your lips, unnoticed even by you. It felt like being on a ship anchored in a quiet bay, surrounded by light and shadow and the low sound of the tide. Except the tide was traffic, and the bay was rooftops, and the stars were streetlights blinking across the avenues. You were safe, held not just by your apartment, but by the rhythm of 1,000 others doing just the same, lying still, breathing slow, letting the night cradle them. You thought of the dreamers above you, the ones on the top floor, maybe with their windows wide open to the breeze. You thought of the dreamers below, already deep in sleep, and of the night shift baker rolling out dough in a fluorescent-lit kitchen, and of the rooftop pigeon perched on a water tank, watching the city change colors. Everyone held in the same net, everyone part of the dream, including you. You let your thoughts loosen like petals floating on water. They drifted and turned and shimmered. Then, without realizing, you smiled. Not because of any one thought, but because everything, just for now, felt enough. There came a moment, gentle and unnoticed, when the city stopped trying to stay awake. It didn't go dark all at once. It didn't announce itself. It simply exhaled, a long, slow breath shared by buildings, streets, people, wind, and sky. You didn't see it happen. You only felt it, soft and unspoken, as the city finally gave in to sleep. The skyline stood steady outside your window, the tall silhouettes of towers now faint against the deep navy of the sky. Their windows had stopped blinking one by one over the past hour. What had been golden squares in the dark slowly dimmed, faded, then vanished. Now only a few remained lit, tiny beacons of someone else still awake, reading perhaps, or washing dishes, or lying quietly as you were, listening to the pulse of a city gone still. You barely moved now. Your body had sunken deep into the bed, cocooned in the warmth of soft sheets and steady breath. Each inhale came slower than the one before. Your arms lay folded just so, and your cheek rested against the pillow's fabric, the pattern indistinct and fading. There were no thoughts pulling at you anymore, just impressions. The feel of the blanket against your collarbone, the muted sound of the wind brushing the outer wall of your building. the occasional creak from the ceiling, expansion, or maybe the echo of a footstep from the floor above. It didn't matter. Everything had grown soft. Even time. Minutes passed without measure. You imagined the world outside your window in layers. On the streets far below, the cars had become fewer and farther between, their engines a hush of movement through sleepy avenues. Taxis now carried late-shift workers, quiet couples or lone dreamers, each headed home or somewhere near it. The crosswalk lights still blinked, red to white to red again, but no one waited to cross. In front of small shops, signs had been flipped to closed. Security grates pulled down, floors swept, counters wiped clean and quiet. Farther still, the East River shimmered under the faint glow of distant bridges, their lights soft and golden, stretching like threads between burrows. The water moved gently, lapping against pilings, carrying the last reflections of the city toward morning. Above all of it, the stars hung in scattered constellations, most of them hidden behind the glow of the city, but some still visible, still patient. They blinked with the same rhythm as the windows that remained. The world, your world, was in harmony. Your eyes opened briefly, just a sliver. The glow of the room had dimmed even further, only a faint halo from the neighboring towers painting shadows across your walls. Your closet door, slightly ajar, stood like a dark portal into quiet. There was nothing to be afraid of, only the comfort of the night. You closed your eyes again. The silence was not empty. It was full, rich with invisible movement. In other apartments, soft night sounds still played, the click of a thermostat, the slow stretch of bed springs, a faucet dripping in a bathroom. Somewhere down the hall, a neighbor's cat knocked something over, then leapt quietly to a windowsill. You heard none of it clearly, but your body knew it, like how you know the weight of a familiar coat or the scent of a room you've always loved. Even your dreams, not yet formed, were beginning to stir. They hovered near you, not rushing, not yet stories, just soft impressions. A distant garden, a train that never arrived, the hush of snow on old rooftops, a friend you once knew, smiling in the corner of your memory, a field lit by lanterns, a letter arriving by mistake. They circled you like fog, gentle, slow, waiting. You yawned once, but so quietly it barely changed your breath. The pillow beneath your cheek felt impossibly soft. You let yourself sink further. The elevator, if it moved at all now, did so like a whisper. Maybe once an hour, maybe not at all. Even the radiator, your nighttime companion, had softened into an even hum. Not cold, not hot, just present. The city slept, and it held you. You were part of it now. Not separate, not watching, not listening. You had joined it. You were a flickering light gone dark, a page closed but remembered. You were part of the slow rhythm of the metropolis winding down, not apart from it, but within it. A heartbeat among thousands, a dream shared in quiet harmony. Across the city, thousands of others lay in their own beds, just like you, some halfway into dreams, others watching the ceiling, others lying still in gratitude. And somehow, you were all connected, not by touch, not by words, but by rhythm. A shared silence, a shared peace. The city no longer asked anything of you, not even to sleep. It only offered rest, offered stillness, offered this quiet hour when the world asked nothing and everything was simply allowed. Your last conscious thought wasn't even a thought, just a feeling, a warmth that wasn't from the blanket, a softness that wasn't from the pillow, a quiet that wasn't just the absence of noise. And then gently, quietly, you slipped under, into sleep, into the city's arms, into the rhythm of towers and tunnels and rooftops and breath. And far above the skyline, past the blinking towers and distant ferry docks and river bridges, the stars watched over you. One by one, they blinked. And the metropolis, slow and vast and full of dreams, held you gently in the hush of night, and dreamed with you.